So the accordion, as you can see, is an area of basically a rectangular area on your page that has a set of buttons that allow you to change what is displayed in that rectangular area. And the thing that's really powerful about them, especially in a SiteGrinder context, is that you can put any kind of SiteGrinder content inside your accordion panels. So this is a gallery, for example, and it's just inside one of my accordion panels. Here we have a form. And you'll notice here we have the new image button as the form submit button feature going on right here. This is actually a content image that can be switched out with the content manager. Here we have some text, and again, this text is fully editable in the content manager, even though it's not always visible. It's only visible when its panel is open. So we've seen a little bit about how this accordion looks and how it operates on the page. Let's take a look at how you set something like this up in Photoshop. The first thing I'm going to do very quickly here is just a little bit of a review of the difference between a column and a panel and just kind of how columns and panels work. And that's because a lot of the new features either can work with columns and panels or require columns and panels. So I've taken a very simple document here, and on the right side I've got a column background, and again it's just that gray rectangle. And on the left side, I've got a panel background. Again, it's just basically a duplicate of the column layer, but it's got the panel hint instead of the column hint. And what I've done is I've piled some things on top. So basically, when you put things in front of, in the layer order, and that are positioned within the rectangle of a column or panel, they become part of that column or panel. And so this big text layer is one type layer. There's another type layer below it, which is that sum text layer. And I've even added a little icon image layer there. And so these things are all going to be part of the My Panel panel by virtue of the fact that they fit entirely within its rectangle, and they are above it in the layers palette, and what I like to call in front of it. They're essentially between you and it as you're looking at the screen. And we did essentially the same thing with the column over here. I've got some text, some big text, and I've got this icon. And the only difference here, again, is that this has the column hint, the other has the panel hint. Now what I'm going to do is jump into Safari, and let's take a look at what they look like after I built them, and see what happened. Basically in Photoshop there's more text than you can see in those type layers. And notice that in the panel it just blew across the icon and out of the bottom of the panel. And that's because panels don't grow. Panels collect layers together so that you can manipulate multiple layers at the same time, but they don't grow intelligently. Whereas columns, it actually grew not only the background color of the column, it even pushed down the icon. So columns are very clever about how they move things. Really the only drawback to columns is they can get a little complex if you end up playing bumper cars with columns, which is what you want to do because columns move other columns away, sometimes in ways you might not expect. But it's often worth using columns because they are so powerful in terms of their ability to shove around things that are inside them and shove around other columns that are outside them. The other thing that you want to be careful about with columns is things really need to be all the way inside the column rectangle. If they stick outside, sometimes SiteGrinder will assume they're not really part of the column. And then finally, the only other downside to columns compared to panels is that sometimes things will shift a little bit in a column because of the flow that SiteGrinder has to create in the underlying HTML. So you can't guarantee pixel accuracy in a column, whereas you can in a panel. All right, so that's kind of a refresher course on columns and panels. The reason I bring this up is because this is very much to do with how accordions are constructed. So here is the actual Photoshop document that constructed the accordion that I was just playing with in the browser. And the most significant layer to notice here, I've hidden everything else, is this layer which uses the new accordion hint. And again, it's just a rectangular collector, just like a column or a panel, but it uses the accordion hint to collect both what we call the tabs of the accordion, which are those panels of content that change, as well as the buttons that control those changing panels. And sorry, someone's asking quickly to review the column versus panel in the PSD again. So I'm just going to quickly bring this back here. And the thing to notice here is this right-hand side gray box has the column hint and contains the big text layer and the sum text layer. That's these two here. Notice that their outlines fit entirely within the outline of the column layer. And the panel layer over here, it's the same deal. So in other words, we're collecting things together based on their size and position within the document, based on also things being in front of other things by virtue of the fact that they're above them in the layers palette. So for example, if I take this envelope image and I drag it down here below the panel so I don't actually see it anymore, then it won't be part of the panel because it's now behind the panel, so it's not considered part of the panel. And it's the same with a column. If I take this big text layer from the column over here and I drag it underneath the column layer, then it's not going to be part of the column. The column will completely ignore that layer because it's behind it. So that's really important to understand, especially when we get into accordions, because accordions are essentially like a giant club sandwich of layers that are content and layers that are rectangular sort of collectors like this. I call them boundary layers. I call both columns and panels a boundary layer because that's their primary function, is to contain other layers within them. There are reasons why these kinds of hints are used on rectangular areas rather than on, let's say, layer groups in the layers palette. One of them is that okay, so someone's asking, why do we need panels? Panels are pixel perfect in their placement, and therefore you can count on a layout of a set of things, and this is especially important with the gallery panel sheets concept. But columns, as I said, are more powerful. So we're going to switch here to the accordion, and I just want to once again reiterate that there are basically two ways to group things with SiteGrinder. One is to put them in an actual layer group in the layers palette, and sometimes put a hint on the group itself. And the other way is what I've just described. It's to create a big rectangular layer and fit other layers within that rectangle. And the reason we use this rectangular layout is because things that are in layer groups, these layer folders up here, they can be anywhere in the document. And that means it's too easy to make mistakes with areas that need to be contained in a rectangular area. So for example, it's really important in an accordion that everything actually fits within the accordion background here. That's this main section accordion layer. Now, what we're going to do is start piling things on top of this accordion layer. And so we're going to add what we call tab layers, which use the tab hint and are also just these rectangular collectors. And then we're going to also use button layers. And all of those things are going to fit within this big accordion layer. So let's take a look, for example, at our first tab layer. So that's this white rectangle here, and it's called Projects Group -tab. And we also added a background layer, because just like with columns and panels, a tab can have a background. In this case, it's a background with the pattern overlay. Actually, this is a gradient overlay effect that's creating that sort of blue wash across it. And so what that means is that SiteGrinder, rather than creating one giant graphic, it will create a very tiny slice of that graphic and repeat it horizontally. So that'll make your pages download more quickly, but yet you can still have a very cool background effect. But it is what's important here in terms of the column functionality is that this projects group tab layer, which has the exact same boundaries as its background, is going to be the thing that collects together the content for what we're calling the projects group. Now let's return to the browser here so that we can remember what our goal here is. So here we have projects. So projects has this cool graphic, it's got another graphic, it's got a form. So all of this stuff is going to basically be going inside the projects tab within the accordion. And we're going to express that by just basically putting content layers on top of and fitting inside this tab. So we've got, for example, a form layer. We've got the form button layer. We've got this blue swirls graphic, that middle content, the vertical separator. So all of these things are just our content layers, and they are included within this particular tab because they are, again, in front of it. If they weren't in front of it, the tab would hide them. We'd actually not be able to see them. And because they are contained within this rectangular area. Now, to add a second tab, we actually take another tab layer. In this case, we're calling it expectations group dash tab. And again, group is not a hint. Group's just what the person who designed this this accordion called it. And so what we're going to do is make this visible, and I'll hide the other ones initially, and you'll see again it's just another oh yes, let me make the layers panel a little wider here so you can see the full name. Okay, so again, picture this as building a sandwich, and it's sort of like the accordion is the table that you're building the sandwich on, and the tab is sort of like the first layer of bread. And it's a club sandwich. We're going to have multiple layers of bread within it. So this content is sort of like the bacon, lettuce, and tomato, maybe some mayonnaise. And then we're going to add another layer of bread, which is the let's see, where are we? The expectations group and the expectations group tab. So let's look at what we've got in our sandwich so far. We have the projects group tab, which is collecting all of this content for the projects group tab. And then on top of that, directly on top of it, is the expectations group tab. It's the exact same size as the projects group tab, and it's what's most important about it though is that it is in front of, above, so that we're starting a whole new layer of the sandwich, as it were. And then we have more ingredients, more content layers. And then finally, we have the clients group tab, which is a whole other set of content along with a tab layer. So what the tabs do is they say, okay, everything above me up till the next tab is my content. And you could do this for as many tabs as you like. So you can have an accordion with 10 separate tabs, and the order will be, at the bottom you'll have the accordion, then the first tab layer, then the content that goes on that tab, the second tab layer, the content that goes on the second tab, and so forth ad infinitum. For each tab, you need a button to activate that tab. And the way you connect them together is you name the button after the tab. So notice that we have 3 tab layers. I'm going to highlight them one by one because I know there are a lot of layers here. First we have the projects group tab, the expectations group tab, and then the clients group tab. And you'll notice, hey look, we have an expectations group button, a clients group button, and a projects group button. Now these are layer group buttons, so they are fancy looking. And let's just make them visible here. So here's the expectations group, here's the clients group, and here's the projects group. Now notice, for design purposes, we have these buttons stretch all the way across our accordion, but they don't have to. The main thing that's important about them is that they fit within the accordion layer. So in other words, the rectangle of the button does not jut outside our accordion layers area, and that they're named after one of the tabs. And that also means, of course, that the tabs have to have unique names. You can't have 2 tabs named the same thing and 2 buttons named the same thing. So that's how you control the visibility of your tabs using the tab buttons. So once again, and by the way, notice these have rollover versions as well. They're normal SiteGrinder buttons in pretty much every other way. So you can have rollover and click versions if you like, and they cause the content to appear. There is an accordion video that uses a much simpler version of an accordion document, and I'd recommend visiting that. Also, the accordion, there's a brand new accordion documentation page. It links to both the video and to the file that we are working with right now.